Yes, we are 1 week away from the Georgia primaries for Congress, for governor, and for Senate. So, of course, we have to bring our political expert in, Kimberly Martin. Thanks for joining us. Real quick, some breaking news as we get here. South Carolina, though, has denied, the Senate in this case, has stopped the Sina D option, which would be the extra session they would have to discuss redistricting. So it looks like redistricting in South Carolina will be dead. We'll go ahead and give you the absolute latest to that in the upcoming shows. But this is a big deal from this level, Kim, on what exactly this means for South Carolina.
Yeah, so this is a big deal. This means that South Carolina gets to save itself the chaos that would have come if they had redistricted and had to postpone the primaries moving forward. I think there were a lot of people wondering what will happen if we have to postpone the primaries, what will happen if the districts change, and how will we deal with this. And so now they don't have to worry about that.
And as we said, court changes. I recall all kinds of court cases were coming off of this too. Georgia already took care of this and said they're not going to go ahead and deal with redistricting right now, which means we get a straight up primary, first of all, next week on this Tuesday. What's interesting is some of the polls now, as we get a little bit closer, have changed, especially on the Senate side of things. Talk to me about what's going on in that race.
Right, so we've got a Senate race going. We've got Mike Collins, who seems to be leading. There have been a couple of polls that have come out recently saying Mike Collins has at least a 10-point lead ahead of his competitors. One of the very interesting things to come out of some recent polling is that Derek Dooley seems to be moving up on people's radar to be the candidate for Senate. And so this is really interesting. We can see, so this poll that I was looking at recently from Qantas polling, which essentially breaks down who the voters are. These are very likely Republican voters, and it's showing where they are around the state and what they believe. And one thing that we're noticing from the polls is that Mike Collins is doing particularly well with voters in the Atlanta area. And the one thing Buddy Carter's doing very well is getting voters in our area of the state. He's not playing quite as well outside of the coastal area of
But to win Georgia, you basically have to win Atlanta, don't you?
You do, yes. And so Derek Dooley is moving up when polling in Atlanta, and so I think that's probably one of the areas where he's doing well right now.
Now, interesting, Collins still in the lead by 10 points, you said, but Dooley may be the biggest threat in Democrats' mind to Jon Ossoff.
Right, so if we think about what happens if we end up in a runoff with Dooley and Mike Collins. Mike Collins has advertised himself as sort of a MAGA warrior, and Derek Dooley is advertised himself as more of a moderate Kemp-style, traditional type of Republican. And so then you're going to have the electorate have very different decision to make, two totally different candidates if we do a runoff.
Looks like the Republican side of the governor probably set Rick Jackson and Burt Jones, we assume. No one knows for sure. Brad Raffensperger still there, but pretty significantly behind in many of the polls. The Democratic side seems to be up in the air. Keisha Lance Bottoms has that one spot we believe hooked up, but she's not going to get 50%. So we're looking at 3 different people who are in play for the second spot in that runoff?
Right, so with Keisha Lance Bottoms, most polls are showing her at least 40%. That doesn't give her the 50% plus 1 that she would need to be able to automatically get past a runoff election. So we've got a couple of people in the running. We've got Mike Thurmond, who is the DeKalb CEO, who's playing very well in the Atlanta area. There is Jeff Duncan even, there's some polls that have got him up on Jason Estevez, who is a state representative who has been polling sort of lower than Keisha Lance Bottoms as well. So the big question will be, once we get over the primaries, who will be up against Keisha Lance Bottoms for the Democrats?
Because everybody was scared of Duncan, the former Republican turned Democrat right now. But Thurmond may be the guy that they're a little bit off with.
Yeah, Thurmond seems to be holding steady at around 15, 16% in most polls, and no one really comes close to that. Jeff Duncan, in some where he's doing better than Jason Estevez, seems to be at about 10%, but that's outside of the margin of error for most polls, so most people are pointing towards Mike Thurmond.
Okay, Kim Martin, thank you so much. So we'll go ahead and go upstairs, and we'll get you a full podcast on what's going on. We'll get Kim's picks for who she thinks may be in these runoffs at least. And remember, go to WSAV.com, your election headquarters. We've got all the interviews that we've done with many of the candidates, including the gubernatorial and Senate candidates in both South Carolina and Georgia for you.